sound.
Welcome to the Pushing Forward Podcast. We getting it in right now with your host, Jamal Potts.
Spit more than metaphors and hard rhymes. I paint a portrait that gets recorded on large signs. You gotta see it clear, eyes closed.
Hey, welcome to the second season and the third episode of the Pushing Forward Podcast. I'm your host, Jamal Potts, and before I introduce my guest, I usually say I launched the website, but I no longer have that website anymore. But I am going to come with a store page where you can buy merchandise, hats, beanies, t-shirts, long sleeves, a full-fledged outfit. All that stuff is in the making. But what I do need right about now is all friends, family, associates to subscribe to my YouTube channel. All you got to do is go to YouTube, type in Pushing Forward Podcast, and it'll pop up, hit the subscribe button, and it'll bring you directly straight to my page because I need all likes and subscribe. It costs you nothing to hit the like button or to subscribe to the channel. But it's not about me at this point. I got the one, the only, Charles Blalock. How you doing today?
I'm doing real well. It's such a pleasure to be here and glad to know that you're doing this and you're involved in something that I think is of goodwill.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. How the family been doing?
The family's doing real well. As most of the folks out there that know who I am, I lost my first wife some 34, 35 years ago. And just recently I got married about a year ago and things are going real well. I won't exchange places with nobody. I happen to be one of the happiest people I believe that on earth. And sometimes, young man, I feel, and I know this is crazy, but back when I was in school, all of the teachers had a favorite in the classroom. They called that person the teacher's pet. Well, God has been so good to me, sometimes I feel like I'm his pet, which I know I'm not. He loves everybody, but he loves me, and I am so blessed. I'm so blessed when I think in terms about the many people that I grew up with, who has passed on, even your father. I'm looking at a picture right now that's getting my attention right now, that number 11 on that picture. That's your father there. And I can recall those days. Those was our earlier days, 15 and 16 years of age. And me and your father was real good friends. We worked together at the nursing home. We left there. We went over to the VA hospital. And both of us was able to retire there. And he was a very fine man, a military man, so I was also a military man. It does me good. I know that he's pleased this morning to know that one of his better friends is sitting down with his son. And I'm happy to be here, and I feel honored for you to call me in and spend this time with me.
I appreciate it, Mr. Blalock. This right here mean a lot to me because, you're an older person and you have your experience and stuff like that. So I just want to touch bases on, tell me about how I was growing up in Tallassee.
Well, when I think in terms of when I grew up, I don't like to get into race issues or racial things, but when I grew up, the black people in the city of Tallassee was somewhat at a disadvantage. They had a so-called place for us. Our moms and our dads, they worked hard, but they never was given the type of salaries that I believe that they should have gotten. Because when I was 9 years old, I went to work. There stood two Coca-Cola crates on the top of each other for me to be tall enough to lean over into the sink, to the dish sink, and wash dishes at a cafe downtown. I got paid $2.50 a week. And would you believe that $2.50 I gave to my mother, and that's what our rent was, $2.50 a week, $1.25 a room. But you know what? We didn't have much, son, but we were a happy people.
Okay.
We were a happy people. You hear the remark, it takes a village.
Yep.
Well, I believe that that's what I was raised up on, because when my mother got ready to leave home, she'll tell Miss Mary or Mr. Smokey or somebody, I'm leaving and I'll be gone for X number of hours. I'll be gone for the balance of the day. The message is that the people that were left, they became your parent. They became your mother. They became your father. And you had to give them the same respect as you did your mother. And if you got out of hand, they would chastise you, and when they chastise you, you beg them, say, please don't tell my mama when she when she get home, because you done have killed me, and when she get home, she gonna finish killing me.
Yep.
But you know, that's just the way things work. Now, I know we have advanced. We have come a long ways. Our jobs are better. We are better educated. We have more material things. But there's one thing that we didn't bring with us that I wish we had brought, and that was the respect for one another out of the black neighborhoods. Because you can see what is happening in America today, all over the world. One of the biggest issues with us as black people, not necessarily racial issues today, is black on black crime.
Yeah.
You know, I live in a neighborhood when my wife and I built our house in 1977. I built that house in the most beautiful neighborhood in this town. Although the neighborhood was all white, but I wasn't looking for a white neighborhood. I was looking for a decent place to build a house. Well, once we built the house, the reason we didn't have any problem is because the white people that lived in that neighborhood, they knew the reputation of my family and of my wife's family, so we didn't have any problem. We was welcome into the neighborhood.
Yeah.
But that was one family, not necessarily family, but this guy whose mom had passed away. He was about 60-some years old when his mom passed away, never been married, retired military. He finally got married and moved a lady in with him. Well, she was a little bit over on the other side of the fence, and she convinced him to move out of that neighborhood. So when he moved, the black people knew that there was a vacant house there, and they was asking me about the house. So the house was bought by a family here on Wall Street, the Brooks family.
Okay.
They bought the house, and then the whites began to eventually just move out. Now, they had causes too. I have to tell you what is the truth. They had causes too, because there were certain blacks that would come in the neighborhood and disrespect people. Okay. One night, this white couple that lived up the street from me, they called me and said, Charles, so there's a pickup truck out here in the front of the house, and I could just smell the marijuana that just come into my house. Now, this is like 12:30 at night, and you come into this neighborhood to do your little dirt.
Yeah.
And that caused people to move out. I don't think it was necessarily racism that caused them to move, but it was the action of young blacks that would come to our neighborhood and do things. But the change has come. I'm happy. I'm very, very happy, because when I stand out there on Journeyville Avenue and I see young men and women like yourself, son, drive through in nice cars, nice pickup trucks, and you got jobs and you buying mobile homes or you buying your home, I'm happy for that. But there's also that certain percentage don't want to do anything.
Yes.
They want to rely. It's kind of like a parasite. They want to live off somebody else, from day to day. But overall, I am proud of the people in the black community. Now, like I say, the street that I live on, there's one block within the street. That's that 400 block that I'm very, very well displeased with. It is not necessarily the people that lives there. It's the people that live there allows others to come in and raise holy king and stuff like that. But overall, when I think in terms of Tallassee, there's nowhere else that I would rather live than in this town. Now, a lot of people might say, well, Tallassee don't offer this and Tallassee don't offer that. But you understand, I was born here. Yeah. So who is it that don't want to live in their hometown? I know it doesn't offer a whole lot, but it does. We got a good school system. You can go and you can get your education. And when you leave, the college doors are open. It's to the point now that where there's no real excuse for you not want to advance your education. But I always tell kids when I'm speaking at the various schools, I make a lot of speeches. Yeah. I go into schools, and when I tell those kids, when you graduate from high school, don't go to work, don't get a job, they look at me like I'm crazy. Say, what do you mean don't get a job? But the point that I'm trying to bring, if you finish high school, you want to go and get a job. And if you get a job, you're going to get in a little debt because you're going to have to pay for that pickup truck that you just bought. And before you know it, you're 29 years old. Yep. So it's hard to try to go back to school when you're 29. But if you come out of high school You can go to college if you really, really want to go to college, because there's so much out there that's offering you. And if you go to college and make A's and B's, you want to pay for your education. Your education will be free if you keep your grades up and everything. So I'm not saying don't go to work. In one sense, you should go to work if you're not going to school. So I see a lot of kids that graduate from high school, they're doing well. Then I also see a lot of kids that graduate from high school and they're not doing anything. But the biggest blame, when I want to place blame as it relates to the black community, I blame it on the black man. The black man, he lay down with our girls, a child is born, and when the child is born, they skip city. Now, when that child get about 16 or 17 years old and started shooting that basketball and started running that football, that's when he want to come back into that child's life. Well, that's not the time to come. You should have come from day one. You know, well, look at your father. He and I, we grew up, like I say, we grew up together, went into the military, but he stayed right here. He stayed right here, and he passed away some few years ago. And what I like so much about you, you continue to work, you go to work, you look out for your mother. I don't say you necessarily take care of your mother, but you look out for your mother. And I don't never hear anything bad about you. You're ripping and running up and down the street with loud music, doing drugs, selling marijuana, nothing like that. You go to work and you come home and you're doing something good, like here today. You know, you're doing something that is that's real good. And there's no limit as to what you can do if you continue to pursue what you are doing right now.
Put your mind to it.
Keep your mind to it and keep on and stay in your lane. Everybody got a lane, and what creates problems for a lot of folks, they get out of their lane. And you can't control somebody else's lane. You got to stay on your lane. But I always say this to our young folks. Try, if at all possible, to set you a goal at an early age and never lose sight of that goal. That goal in itself, now the pathway to you reaching your goal is an education. That's your pathway. And when opportunity comes, you can't say, I got to go and get prepared. When the opportunity comes, you got to be ready right there. So if Channel 12 was to call you tomorrow, you're already equipped with something today that you can take to Channel 12. So that's the thing that I'm saying to you today, to prepare yourself, because it's so easy to get an education, but there's a thin line between good and bad. So you can't be on the fence. You got to be either on one side or on the other side. Now, I can excuse you when you're 13 and 14 years old with loud music, but I can't excuse you when you're 40 and 45.
Because you know better.
You see what I'm saying?
You know better.
So those are some of the things that I try to say to our young folks today, but as it relates to Tallassee, I've often asked myself, Charles Blalock, why are you living in Tallassee today? And the bottom line is that this is where I was born. I've been practically all over the world, but I was never happy until I came back here. When I was living in New York, I had much more material things. I had the outfits, I had the car, I had the nice place to live, I had a good job, but I wasn't satisfied. So what I did, I hit the telephone one night coming out of the movie, and I called my mama. I said, Mama, I want to come back home. I want to come back home to them 2 rooms you got and live in that kitchen on that fold-away cot, because that's where I would be happy. And so that's the main reason. This is home, and I want to be home. And it's not what home makes you, it's what you make home for yourself. And I say to all of our young folks that there is so many opportunities out there for you. Don't choose the wrong one, but you need somebody. And I'm saying this particularly to black men. Don't walk away from your families. Don't do that. You stay, and there are going to be some good days. There's going to be some bad days, but stay there with your family, because you don't know what it means. I was a boy at one time Now, my mother could come see me play basketball or come to see me play football. I was happy. But when I looked up in them stands and I saw my daddy there, it made all the difference in the world.
Yep.
So that's just the way it is. And once again, life is what you make it be. The choices are there. There's many, many, many choices. There are some choices that are good, and there are choices that is bad. But overall, my word is that I am black and I am proud and I love my country. I love my president. I love this and I love that. Although I might not agree with you, but you would never make me stoop so low as to hate you.
Yeah.
Tip of the day. Have you ever gone through a trial and looked at it in a negative light? With a confused state of mind like, damn, this ain't right. Why me? Why is it hard for me to succeed? Why is it so hard for me to overcome eternally? Misfortunes, difficult situations, left behind, can't never get ahead. All in a society where they like to hang your failures right up over your head. Trying to change for the better, but they keep looking at the old you when it rains and pours. But who said you ain't had the strength to get through? Yeah, that storm came and that wind blew. It only made you better. Now it's time to renew.
Okay, Mr. Blalock, let me ask you about this. How did you get started with the radio station? How that came about?
You know, I was in a club, mostly seniors. Well, at the time, I was like a 31-year-old boy. But even in school, I always wanted to be a disc jockey. I always wanted to be in radio.
Yeah.
So when I got out of the military, I went to Northport, Long Island, New York, started working for the government. And that was another young man there. His last name was Holmes. We were like 21 years old, and his wanting to become a disc jockey was the same as mine. So we found a disc jockey school in New York City. We lived in Northport, and we was 45 miles from New York City. So we went and signed up for the school. Neither one of us had a car, so we had to catch the train into the city and back, and then pay for the education. Well, the reason that we both dropped out is because the cost to go to school exceeded that of our paycheck.
Yeah.
So we couldn't afford to do it, but I never lost sight. So when I returned home, being in this little Christmas saving club I was in, on a Saturday evening we would gather at this particular home and we would play church. I would be the preacher and I would always lead song with song, and then we'll put the 45s on and play the 45s, and between the 45s I would always comment. And Miss Eula said, boy, you need to be in radio. You cut for it. About a week or two later, I went up to WTLS. It was up in at the end of the 4-lane going north out of the city. And the guy who owned that was a Mr. Ned Butler. And I walked in that station that Saturday evening. I said, Mr. Ned, how you doing? He said, Charles, how you doing, fella? Well, he knew me. He already knew me, you know. He said, what I can do for you? I said, I want a radio show. And the only thing he said, when do you want to start? That's all he had to say. He said, when you want to start? I said, well, you tell me when to start. He says, what about 2 weeks from now? I said, I would like for it to be on a Saturday evening from 3 to 4 o'clock. He said, well, okay. He said, I can't hire you to work for me, but what I can do is let you have that time and you sell the program yourself. So I went out and I got some very, very fine people. They bought their spots on the show, and I had that show on a Saturday evening, and every radio that you run into, they was tuned to WTLS on a Saturday evening from 3 to 4 o'clock. Now, the results of that program, I started traveling across the country, emceeing program, promoting gospel, and then finally somebody said, Charles, you ought to run for mayor of this city. So you make this city a good mayor. It kind of went to my head, but I felt the pulse of the community. Yeah. So I decided I would run for city council. And I wasn't successful the first 3 times I ran, but in 1987, I was appointed to the council, and I stayed there for 29 years. I was the vice mayor of this city for 29 years, and I was the chairman of the Department of Public Safety committee that kept me in close association with the police department. And that's basically about, it was my desire, many years before I got into radio, that this is what I wanted to do, and I wanted to do gospel radio. I didn't want to do blues or anything. Not that I knocked that, but those disc jockeys who are in radio and do the blues and the rock and roll and all that, they make much more money than ones that plays gospel. Because when you promote a gospel program, you pay you people who attend, and you might wind up maybe with $100 or $50 or whatever profit. But those guys who promote them rock and roll and blues shows, they profits run into the thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
You know, that's just the way it is, because see, they could charge, back during my day, they could charge $10 or $15 for their show, but I couldn't charge about $2.50 for mine, although I have a lot of people there, but they haven't paid that much. But I wasn't in it for the money. I was in it for the glory. I was in it for the enjoyment that I had, because it was something that I wanted to do, and I pursued it. And today, I got callers. I just finished a show this morning, and we get callers from all across the country. It's nothing for me to talk on the radio with somebody from Florence, California, Atlanta, Georgia, Dayton, Ohio, Columbus, Ohio, all of these different places that people call in, plus all of the people in and around Tallassee and throughout the state of Alabama. So I worked at it, and believe you me, I'm not bragging in any way, but Charles Blalock has become a household word in and around the city of Tallassee and across the country. And now on Sunday morning, the old saying go, you can tune in on your computer, 1300WTLS.com, and you can actually see me in my little black jacket and my little black hat.
Okay, so what time does your show air?
Okay, now I start at 8:30 on Sunday morning. From 8:30 to 9 o'clock, I play gospel, but I also make announcements. I got a prayer list. I bring people up to date who has passed away in our community, when the funerals are going to be. And then, but from 9:30 to 10 o'clock, we play uninterrupted gospel music. So it's just strictly gospel music that you hear on Sunday morning. I had to take my hat off to Michael Butler, who is the owner of the radio station. But when I went to that station, the same year that he was born. Right. So it was passed down from his grandfather to him, and he never made any changes. He gave me a free hand to operate, but I must remember that he is the boss. I have to go through him to do a lot of things that I want to do. So a lot of things that I've done, I really owe it to the Butler family, the fine people there at radio station WTLS. And I want to thank you, because I knew you before you was ever thought about. I knew your mama before she knew her name. I knew your daddy just when he got to pronounce his name. So I'm well familiar with this family. And I want to say, as it relates to Wall Street and West Tallassee, when me and your daddy come along, we was glad to see each other. You know, a funny thing about me and your daddy, we kind of liked the same girl at one time.
If you can, you know what I'm saying? Can you kind of like speak on that?
Yeah, I would come to Wall Street. Somebody would bring me over and drop me off, and I would go down to the girl's house. But when I get to the house, the girl's brother would be sitting on the porch, and I asked for his sister. Say, she in the house, but Clint is in there, you know. So what I'll do, I'll sit out there on the porch until Clint comes out. He'll come out, he say, "Hey Charles, what's happening?" I say, "Everything going well, man." I said, "I'm just over here just killing a little time." So he'll leave, and when he leave, I'll go in the house. But I never will forget this one night that Clint left, and he was going, he didn't go home. I assumed that he was going home. But about 9:30, I left the girl's house and I walked out where old funeral home used to be up the road there. They're touring it down. And Clint came home and said, "Hey, Charles," I said, "where you ride at?" I said, "Man, I don't know." I said, I'm gonna have to foot it. You know, I said, "I'm gonna have to walk." Me and Clint started talking, and Clint walked half of the way home with me. We never said nothing about the girl, or never said nothing negative toward one another. We had a good relationship. He chatted We walked halfway home, so if I go to the house and he's there, I'll sit on the porch. And if he came there and I was in the house, he'll sit out on the porch. And we finally wound up working at the nursing home. We were a couple of first blacks that worked at the nursing home, and we got well educated there and taking care of people. And then we wound up. He went to the VA and left me there, and then finally I went to the VA, and we both retired from the VA. But when we got to the VA, we first went into housekeeping.
Yeah.
And when we went into housekeeping, there was a lot of conversation about me and Clint and Pops about the way we kept our wards. We really could detail our wards, and when we put in for other jobs, that's why it was so easy for us to be promoted to other level of better paying jobs than we were, because we had built a good foundation, had a good reputation over there at that VA. And then I hear guys who were in the units, National Guard units with your father, when they went to the Persian Gulf or somewhere, you never would think that Clinton was in a war zone. The way he carried on, so he didn't bar nothing, he didn't show no fear, and he would take the lead role. He would never send nobody into a dangerous situation by themselves. He always led them into that. So I've talked with guys that I work with, they always had something to say about old Sergeant Paul.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this. What advice would you give somebody that want to get in the radio?
Well, the most important thing I'll say is your desire, and you want to pay the price. Now, you can go to a radio station, because like I did at WTLS, you go to a radio station, and you can say to the people that I am interested in radio. Is there any way that you can find a place for me to come? I will volunteer, work here, I'll do odds and ends around here for the purpose of getting educated into radio.
Yeah.
Now, if you go there that way, then there are schools that you can go to. But like I did, although I did start the school in New York, but when I got to Tallassee, I just went up and asked. Now, before I went on the air, actually was turning loose to go on the air, I was allowed to come into the radio station on Sunday morning and train with those gospel groups that come in on Sunday morning and had programs. So that's where I got my experience from. So when I finally got behind the mic, I was ready to go, but I think I was a natural.
Yeah.
But I'm saying, training is good, but I had the talent. Although it's old saying that you can sing, but there's nothing wrong with going to voice school.
Yeah.
So I had the talent, and I did get a little feeling of school when I was in New York, although I couldn't afford it. But this was something that I wanted to do, and it came pretty easy. I just walked in and asked. So if there's something that you want to do, you have a general idea of what it's all about right here and what you are dealing with right now.
Yeah.
And if you walked into one of the radio stations and told them, you wouldn't have no problem here in Tallassee identifying yourself, because all you got to do is tell them people you're a ton in a pot. So they'll know who so they'll know who you're talking about, and you'll work behind the scenes. Now, you got to be willing to do probably some little chores or whatever they want, but that's no problem. Because you got to start at the bottom to work yourself to the top. So if that is something that you want to do, that means that you already qualified to do it. You already have the talent. So you're just following your talent. All you got to do is just to be educated. And if you have to be instructed, although you already got the talent itself. So I think it's something good to be in it. Now the way I'm in it, I'm not into the money-making market.
Yeah.
There are markets out there where you can make some money, although you have to leave. I'm pretty sure you have to leave Tallassee, or unless you become a regular employee of the radio station. So I think it's a good profession to go in, and once you get into it, it won't take as long for your name to get out there. Because if you're playing something good, people are going to listen to you. Now, I have a black and white audience. I don't just have a black audience, although my music is black, traditional gospel music. But you'll be surprised at the white people that I see during the week. Say, Charles, I listen at you on Sunday morning. I listen at the gospel you play, but I also like a message, because every once in a while you stick a little message in there, here and there, and we like to know who's sick, who's been passed on, who's in the hospital. So I know my audience. I know my audience well from over the years that I've been into. I know what your mama like to hear on the radio on Sunday morning.
Yeah.
That's why I poke Saturday once in a while. I say Matana girls, and stuff like
Yeah.
that. I know that they're listening in, and when there is something that is going wrong, I want to know about it. If you're not doing well, let me know. I can give you a call. I'm not a miracle worker, but a lot of times a phone call will do more for a person than a pill will.
You sure will. You right about that.
This is the Pushing Forward Podcast.
You're now tapped into the Pushing Forward Podcast. Up and running. Gone.
It's your boy Cat Daddy, neighborhood superstar. You're now tuned in to the Pushing Forward Podcast. Let's dive.
You now tune into the Pushing Forward Podcast with Mr. Jamal Potts.
Hey world, it's the one and only Trader Chef, your celebrity chef. Hey, you listen to the Pushing Forward Podcast.